in on it too. You should come and sit with us.
Oh, what if I could get the picture wide enough? Okay. Right back.
He carries all that stuff.
Yeah, he's got
All these stuff. That thing I bet is heavy.
Huh?
I bet that little thing's heavy.
Yeah, I bought mine, it is. Probably is.
We need clay.
But they all
Oh,
fold
I got
up
it.
and
I found it.
squeeze up and got a place for everything.
Alright. Comfortable?
Yeah.
Sure this is set. Good. Okay. Alright. So why don't we start with, guys, give me just a little bit of background on where you were living and who you were living with, and then let's get into how you guys first met. Tell me the year and place.
Year and place, date, time, and place. Okay. I was living with my mom on 11th Avenue in Denver.
Mhm.
My sister was there also, and it was about a block from the high school. And the year was 1945.
And I was living with my mom and dad on Calumet, 9th and Calumet, which was about 4 blocks from where she was living and about 3 blocks from the high school. And we were both going to high school over there at West High in Denver. And we just, a bunch of us guys was hanging around and making fun and kind of teasing the girls and so forth. And we got acquainted that way there at school. And then she was working in a movie theater in Santa Fe, there on Santa Fe. And those guys was up there giving her a bad time one night. And she called the manager and kicked us all out. But that didn't discourage me, and I went back and we started hanging around together and going different places and so forth. And we was hanging around at a girl's house,
Donna's.
Donna Hubbard. And that's where I asked her to marry me when we were over there one night. And to my surprise, she said yes.
Now, how old were you guys at this point?
Well, I was, what,
You were 17 then.
17.
Mm-hmm.
You were
15.
15.
Mm-hmm. And so, what kind of stuff were they doing in the movie theater?
Mostly it was a small neighborhood movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
and we looked forward to the weekends because it was cereal time, and
Right.
all the little kids would come to see Buck Rogers
Right.
and the spaceship, and then Cowboys. But movies were Humphrey Bogart, drama mostly, a lot of westerns though, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, and whatnot. I never could really see them because I worked,
Yeah.
but
So these guys are coming and causing trouble?
well, they were being smart.
We'd been
There's
loud.
5 or 6 of them, and I was working the balcony that night particularly. And I don't think it was Doc, I think it was probably Al Brungard,
Well, it was all.
that was just said something that I thought was just not what I was going to listen to. So I went downstairs and asked the manager to have him leave. And I thought, okay, that's all I see about that guy.
Something vulgar?
Yeah, yeah, it was really funny. But I just figured, oh well, they were rowdy. They weren't ornery, terrible, but they were just, there was 5 or 6 of them. And from short to tall, and they were just contrary.
So, from the time you guys first met or started hanging out to the time you proposed? How long was that?
Well, it was within the year,
Yeah, it was probably 5-6 months.
actually,
Yeah.
within the year that we met. Actually, we had biology together when he came to biology. We would have the class together, but he went in one door and out the other a lot.
Well, you were cutting class?
Mhm.
Sort of.
No.
Not me.
Yeah, we'd ditch class and go down and go to picture show
Yeah.
downtown.
Downtown.
Yeah. Yeah. But well, she was singing in the high school choir, and she was soloist. Could really sing, can yet if she just would. But she'd go sing, and I'd go down and wait till they got it done, and then take her, and we'd go home. Of course, we didn't have any cars or anything. We'd done everything on streetcars.
Or we walked a lot.
Yeah, we walked. Yeah, it wasn't too far, and we'd walk. Sometimes I'd go down. They'd be singing downtown, and then it was about maybe a mile back to where she lived, and I'd walk her home, and then we just kind of goofed around, like old teenagers do, I guess.
Well, we both worked, so there was not a whole lot of
Yeah.
goofing.
I was working as stock boy in a grocery store, and so then, but spring when we got out of school, well, she went to California.
In the summer, right?
Yeah, came out here with your dad.
Yeah, in the summer I came out here.
For vacation or what?
Well, no, Mom was, supposedly we split custody, you know.
Right.
So in the winter I'd stay there and go to school, in the summer I'd come out here.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, but a lot of the summers I came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out that year. Bobby was particularly unwell,
Right.
and I came out that year. And then we wrote. We didn't talk on the phone, I don't believe at all, did we?
No,
Once or
you,
twice, maybe?
No, well, we didn't, where I was out there in
There
Wyoming,
was no
we didn't have a
phones.
phone.
Mm-hmm.
But before you went to California, well, I had went to Wyoming already.
That's right.
And we were up there in Wyoming, and my Uncle Kelly, his girlfriend was living with my folks too. And so her and Carol came up there to Wyoming to
We
see
took
us.
the bus
From Colorado?
from Denver. What a bus ride.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, it's,
Was a long ways.
yeah, I forget just how far it was. It's gotta be 250, 300 miles.
It was a long way.
And I got up there, and of course that was just the time they were decided to ship all the cattle in to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we was busy moving cattle, and we didn't get to see them. Saw them at breakfast, and then they'd bring us lunch, and we'd see them. And then when we got done at night, well, we'd have
Dinner.
together, and us guys was tired, and we most just went to
Went to
bed.
bed at dark.
So this was all that first summer. You guys had met in the school year and kind
Mhm.
of courted, and the 5-6 months went by, and you'd proposed, and then you went to California and
Mhm.
came back, and then went up to Wyoming.
No,
No.
I actually went to Wyoming first,
Okay.
just for the weekend,
Uh huh.
and then we came back on Sunday.
Okay.
And because he was way up there,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, he stayed till fall, I guess.
Yeah, we stayed
November,
in
probably.
Wyoming, and we wrote. We never, of course, like I said, we didn't have any phone
Right.
up there, so we wrote back and forth all summer. And then we decided that when I got done there in Wyoming, well, I'd come to California and we'd get married.
And that's what we
And,
did.
because we had never set a date, you know.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided by corresponding back and forth that when I finished in Wyoming, well, I'd come out to California. And we finished there, it was along towards the latter part of October when we finished up. And then we went to Brush, and they had a big snowstorm that year in Brush, and they had a lot of cattle out on wheat pasture. And so I helped them gather all their cattle that were out on wheat pasture. And we got all those gathered, well, then I came back to Denver, and Mom and I went down and bought me a brand new suit, and bought a set of wedding rings, and we, then I got on the bus. I stayed with the folks there in Denver probably about a week after I got done working for the Weisbarts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I caught a bus and came to California.
So, your family knew?
I asked Mother after we decided that we would get married, if I could be engaged, because that's what we were engaged, and she said no.
Uh-huh.
So I just didn't say anything more.
Uh-huh, that was it.
That was it.
No conversation at all.
No, no. Well, she was very adamant that we were young,
Mm-hmm.
and
Which you were.
which we were,
Mhm.
and that was fine. And I knew there wouldn't be any use arguing with her about it, so I just dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was gone anyway.
Right.
So then after we kept corresponding and he was definitely coming out, I was still out here and I signed up for school in Redlands
Mm-hmm.
because we would have still been in high school.
Right.
And
So
that was
this is fall now?
was fall.
Of 40
So of
five. 46.
46, September.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up for school in Redlands, and because I wasn't sure when he would be finished, it could have been March for all I knew. So
Right.
I figured I needed to go on to school. And I signed up for school.
But why didn't you go back to Colorado?
Well, I just decided I'd stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And Mother was overburdened with Bobby
Right.
being ill, and Louis was there. Her husband at the time was there too. So,
Uh-huh.
I mean, somebody had to be there with her
Right.
all the time. So they alternated shifts at work and
Right.
stuff. And I figured, oh well, it would just give her a little break too. But when he came out here and actually got off the bus, wasn't sure he'd be on the bus, but he did. He had a lot of chances to get off. He probably thought about it a lot.
Did you?
No,
No.
no, I stayed on that bus all the way, came all through Arizona and New Mexico and all down through the cattle country and come on out. Never really thought about getting off.
Yeah.
I was coming to California.
That, was it hard coming up with the money for the rings and the bus ride and
Well, I'd save some money working through the summer,
yeah.
you know, but I'd pretty well spent it all when I got to California. Well, we had enough to go. Her brother and his wife went with us, and we went down to Yuma, Arizona, is where we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a hotel down there we come back to Brawley. The first night stayed there at Brawley, and then we came back up through Salton Sea and Indio and Palm Springs and all the way up to back to where her folks was living in Calamasa.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there about 5 days. I
Yeah,
guess,
something like
4
that,
or
a
5
week or
days.
so. Well, first thing we did though, we sent Mother and Mert each telegrams
Yeah.
And this is December.
in December and
Right.
told them that we had gotten married
Uh-huh.
and that we would be home, but we weren't sure exactly when.
Uh-huh.
Just to let them know we were fine.
Yeah.
And we did send them wires because I don't think we had a phone either. You probably did,
Yeah, Mert had a phone.
but I don't believe we had a phone.
So- So you just went down to like a Western Union?
Yeah, we
or
went to the Western Union and wired them that we had gotten married
Right.
in Yuma, and
Oh, from Yuma you did the wiring?
Mhm.
Okay.
and then that we would call them or whatever, when we got home,
Right.
which we did.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, her dad, when we were talking about getting married, why he was gonna buy her a trousseau and a whole bunch of stuff, and then if we wanted to go back to Colorado, he was gonna pay the trip and so, phone ring.
Let it ring.
It'll answer itself.
It'll pick
Okay.
up on 4.
I'll wait for it to.
And,
Let's wait for it.
Should have brought it in here.
You want me to get it?
Yeah, it'll pick up on 4. Should pick up. Not yet. It's Rosanna.
I'll call it.
What?
none. But he never came through.
He didn't pay my bus ticket. He didn't give
He
me
didn't
any
give us
money.
nothing.
He,
Ah.
we were,
He did feed me while I was out there, was about all.
Now, why did you decide to go to Yuma?
it was because the waiting period for blood tests and stuff is more in California.
Really?
You can go there with, I
Well,
think, without
you
the,
There was no blood tests in Arizona. Where here in California and in Colorado too, you had to wait 4 days for your blood test to come back.
or whatever, something.
And so we decided to go to Yuma, where there was no blood test, no waiting period.
Why was that? Why was 4 days too long?
Oh, it wasn't too long. It was just something else to do.
Well,
And-
besides that, we was afraid that her being 15 and me only being barely 18, that there would be a little.
You had a
Okay.
letter, though, from your
Yeah,
mom
I
and
had-
dad
my
saying
mom
he
gave
could
me
get
a letter
married.
saying that it was all right for me to get married.
Yeah.
But see, she didn't have any letter,
Right.
and we
Well,
were
I
pretty
had-
sure that in California there'd have been a little problem with it, so we just went to Arizona.
I think Dad would have gone down a sign for me for that matter.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mother would have probably killed him, but
Well, he wanted to get off of her child support.
well,
He was paying child support.
he
and I
wasn't
didn't like
paying
it.
child support.
Right.
He was
So
supposed
He was
to
supposed to be
He was
paying,
supposed to be. That's the operative word.
So he didn't mind really that you were.
No, he just.
No, he didn't mind, and he liked Doc, and Cap and Peggy had lived in 29 Palms, and they suggested going to Yuma,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's a really quick trip, just a few hours. We drove down in the afternoon, and we couldn't get a hotel or a motel.
Mhm.
I can't remember why it was crowded.
There was, well, it was peak season in the wintertime down there.
And so
And there was I don't know whether it was a convention,
I can't remember.
something down there, and there just wasn't.
There
a
wasn't
hotel,
anywhere.
none.
Okay.
And so we slept, Cap and I slept in the park in under the park bench, and they slept in the car.
We actually
And
didn't really sleep. We just talked.
Right.
the next morning, well, we got up and went over and rented a hotel room. They had rooms that were empty early in the morning, but we had to be out by 11 o'clock.
So we could shower and
So we could shower
clean
and
up.
dress and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we rented that, and we got all ready and went down to the wedding chapel, and the old boy come in, and we got married. And they furnished everything. Well, her brother and sister-in-law was the witnesses to it.
stood up for us.
Yeah, they stood up for us, with us. And when we finished there, well, we went down and had lunch.
We had lunch and then we went over to Old Mexico,
Went down
looked
in
around in the shops.
crossed the border into Calexico
Mm-hmm.
and Mexicali. Got down there, and Peggy wanted a pair of shoes. Well, we walked down the street, and the window, they had the price of them, but it was in pesos.
Pesos.
And it was about 8 times what American dollars are, you know. And my gosh, some of them $100.
So she didn't get any shoes.
So she spooked down and didn't buy any shoes. So we came back into Brawley and stayed the night in Brawley
And Raleigh.
and come back up, stopped at the Salton Sea on the way back to Calamasa.
What-
There wasn't anything in, it was just there was no buildings and all around it.
It's
It was
hardly
just
anything now.
just the Salton Sea. And we fiddled around there for part of the day, and then we drove on in and went
It
in
was hot.
to Calamasa that night and stayed there. We kinda was debating whether to get a job and stay here in California or go back to Colorado. And there wasn't anything right there that I thought would be a job that I could do and
Mm-hmm.
so forth, so we decided we'd come back. So we got on the Greyhound bus. Come
Away
back.
we went.
And how many, did you have money for that? Or would you get money for that?
Well, had the bus money,
We had the bus
the
money.
bus ticket money. We had
Right.
very little. We stopped in Salt Lake and we went,
No, we stopped in
No.
Las Vegas.
oh, Las Vegas, that's where we
Yeah.
went and bought bologna.
Yeah. Got off the bus. It stopped for about
Whatever
an hour. It was
length of time.
Well, it stopped for dinner
Mhm.
in Las Vegas, so we run down to a little grocery store and bought some bologna and
Crackers.
crackers and quart of milk, I
I
think.
think probably.
And
That was our
then
dinner.
we got back on the bus and we went on, and when they'd stop to eat, well, we'd eat bologna and crackers. And then we
We still like bologna and crackers.
but we come back, got into Denver, and didn't even have streetcar fare or cab fare up to
Yeah.
where my folks was living.
Yeah.
So we
And
caught
it
a
was in the
cab,
night too.
and he brought us out to where they were living. I said, "Now you'll have to wait just a minute. I'll have to go and get the money to pay you." And he wasn't too sure, but Carol stayed there with her.
And they just left her as ransom.
So I went in and told Mom how much it was, and she gave it to me. So then we went in, and they was glad to see us and
Yeah.
congratulated.
And of course
they were
I
happy
knew-
for you.
I knew Mert
Mhm.
and Co.
Mhm.
Yeah,
because I'd been at his house and he'd been at mine, and
yeah. Well, folks liked her real well,
Mhm.
so
both Dad
we
and
stayed
Mom.
with them till we could find an apartment. Actually, that was
Yeah,
war
It was hard to come by. in that
wartime,
days.
and apartments were.
Well, what we finally rented was a one-room place, and it had a little old stove
Mhm.
and a sink and a bed and a table.
And then a Schifferow
Yeah, kind of.
wardrobe thing,
And where was that at?
and that was in Denver on what, Calumet?
Yeah, that was
Calumet?
between 10th and 11th.
Yeah, on Calumet. And it had been a beautiful old home, great big old home that they divided into apartments.
Sure.
And so the room we had been divided, probably living room, parlor kind of thing, and it had double doors. So all they did was close those double doors off and put the wardrobe in front of them, and then they rented out the front part and our part.
How much was rent?
It was $36 a week.
Wow.
No, I didn't think,
Yeah.
I was only making
I know.
$37
It was
a week.
very hard. It was.
Well, it was, I think
Yeah.
it was $37 a month,
Oh,
but I was only
maybe,
making.
but I don't
because-
think so. But it was expensive. I know that it was
Right.
really expensive, but it was adequate,
Mhm.
you know. And we were there until we went out to Littleton.
Well, yeah, but we stayed there, and I worked at the foundry with Kelly.
His
um,
uncle Kelly.
Yeah, he was working there, and I went to work over there, and I stayed there. And then I got a chance, there was a little guy there that, and they kind of slowed down, work got short.
Mhm.
So we went out to the packing house and went to work at Cudahy Packing. And we worked there for a while, and
Both of you did?
Mm-mm.
No,
No,
just me.
just
And this fellow
Right.
went out with me. And I worked there for a while, and then I went over and worked for Armour for a while, or vice versa, I forget which. Maybe I worked for Armour and then Cudahy.
Mhm.
But anyway, I worked there, and then we got a chance to go to work on a dairy farm at Littleton.
Okay.
So we moved out there, and they furnished us a kitchen, dining room, and a bedroom, and 3 rooms and a bath.
Mhm. It was kind of like a duplex would have been
Well,
because
it
there was
was,
another
yeah.
milker on one side and we were on the other,
This,
It was-
and it was kind of a L-shaped house.
this is bigger than the old place that you'd been living?
Oh yeah, we only had one room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is about when? You were living,
Well, Chris was just born when he wasn't he was 2 months old.
were you still in the first apartment when Chris was born?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was living in the little 1-room place when
Right.
Chris was born.
Okay.
We lived there about a year.
So this
Then-
is
We moved to the
So
dairy.
this was 47,
Yeah,
late 47?
late 47,
Yeah.
yeah.
into 48.
Okay.
We stayed there at the dairy for 2 years or a year.
I believe we only stayed there a year.
Yeah.
And what he did something and we
Well,
changed,
he was going to sell out,
and we changed and went to Arches after
Yeah.
that, another dairy,
and
only in
when
Golden.
we were working for
One
him,
after the
well,
other.
we met a fellow that was also had a dairy,
Mm-hmm.
and so when he found out that Bert was going to close his dairy and move, why, he come over and asked me if he wanted me to go to work for him. So I went over and went to work for him. We stayed there 2 years.
Until we went to Gunnison.
Yeah, 2 years.
So, and what kind of work were you doing? You weren't working at all, right?
No,
No, I wasn't
no.
working at all.
What sort of things were you doing?
Just the
the
dairy,
regular
milking
dairy
cows and,
Feeding
and
cows,
feeding cows. And
hauling milk.
stuff? Right.
I'd haul the milk into the Coors Brewery every day
Oh.
and
Get the malt.
get the malt to come back, feed the cows, brewer's malt.
Right.
We was feeding that to the cows. And Carol and Chris would Bernard go with me every morning to take the milk in.
Hmm.
And we'd stop about twice a week and get a pint of ice cream a piece. And or half a pint or
Whatever.
it was. But anyway,
Eat it on the way home.
we'd eat it, and Chris, he'd have some of mine and some of hers, and we'd get home, and then we had to go to work. But
Mm-hmm.
we stayed there till this guy that I had worked for he went in partnerships with a guy in Gunnison, Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
with they had a dairy up there. And while we was at Arches, why, we bought an old 34 Ford Victoria Coupe. And we had it.
That was a neat little car.
It was a good little car. But we loaded everything in the trailer and moved up there. And
And how far away was that roughly?
A long ways.
it's about well, it's not a long ways. It's about 90 miles from
Top
Denver.
of the mountains,
It's right,
southwest,
they call it the top of the world.
Right.
down there.
Okay.
very high.
And we worked there on that dairy. We moved in there in March.
It was, yeah, very,
March or
very
April.
early spring.
A 48.
And we went to work there, and I was.
Chris was 2 while we were there.
Yeah.
Had his 2nd birthday, so
Yeah.
that was 48.
48.
He
Okay.
stayed there. He was there when he was 2, and just a little while after he was 2, we didn't even stay there a year. It got cold. Ooh, it got cold.
He was bitter.
Yeah.
Well, we was there, started I think in March, and it froze every night until July. And then from July till August, it didn't freeze.
1 month.
Water, the horse tanks had freezed and everything. So then from August 1st on around till we left there, I think we left there in October. Pretty close.
October or November. But he got sick is the reason we came down out of the mountains.
Well, it just.
And
He would go to the barns at like 2:30 or 3 in the morning,
Uh-huh.
get up out of bed, warm bed, run like a crazy person to the barns and turn on all the electricity. And then by 6 or 6:30 it would be warmed up to where it would work.
Mm-hmm.
That's how cold it was.
Right.
And he caught a very bad cold and pneumonia, and he was just sicker than a dog. And I said, you know what?
Of course, there's no going to the doctor.
No, going to the doctor.
Well, we couldn't afford a doctor
I don't think
anyway.
I don't even know we knew one.
We never knew a doctor in
But
Gunnison.
Gunnison was how far from the ranch?
Well, it was,
25 miles, something like that?
I think Doyleville was 15 miles, and we was a couple miles.
Yeah, but Gunnison,
Yeah,
It
well,
was
I
about
say
25
Doyleville was
miles.
15 miles, and then we was a couple miles past that.
Mhm.
So it was 17, 20 miles. And we did get a real pleasure one time. We went to the picture show. We
In
took Chris.
in
he was-
Gunnison.
He
He was 2,
not quite 2.
yeah,
And we went to the picture show. And
very rarely.
oh boy, he just wouldn't sit still. And he kept talking and kept talking, wouldn't sit still. I'd take him out, paddle his little butt and bring him back. He's going to be good, going to be good.
I'd be good, Daddy.
That's what he said.
I'd
Right.
be good, Daddy.
And I felt kind of sheepish the last time I took him out, because all the way down the aisle he said, "I'd be good, Daddy, don't pack me, Daddy, don't pack me."
Poor
So-
baby.
We finally she got to see all the picture show. Then we went home, and while we was up there, he got his first haircut.
Oh,
And we took him in, set him down there, and the barber come over and put the towel around his neck and put the little clip on the towel. And boy, he started screaming and hollering and raising heck, and I threatened him, but I never spanked him that time, but he just throwed a fit pretty quick. This guy, it was about noon, I guess, and he decided he had enough of that. So he took his towel off, put it up, and walked out. And the other barber, he was so ashamed. Well, when he come over to finish the haircut, we looked, and this guy had clipped his
neck.
end of that thing on his neck.
Biggest old nasty bruise on his,
looked like,
that baby's
well,
neck.
he just pinched it, and so he wasn't going to let that thing go around his neck. We finally just told him we just lay it around. We wouldn't just lay it around. So then he did, and he finally got his hair cut.
Poor
Boy, that
little
was a
thing.
fight.
Kid.
God, that was a fight.
Oh.
And he was a good baby. He was a good
Yeah, he was
little
good,
kid.
good kid.
He was
really.
amiable. He never hardly ever cried.
But he just couldn't sit still in that picture show. He never had sat still in his life. He's, out where he could go and do anything he wanted to do, he did.
Mhm.
And but when we left Gunnison, then why, it got just too cold, and we come home, and my uncle Hud and Dad, they came up there. They rented a truck. Mom rented a truck. We rented a truck. Some way they got a truck. I don't know whether they borrowed it or rented it. And they come up, and we loaded everything in the truck and started for Denver. And there was a kid that was living neighbors to us. He wanted to go with us.
Mhm.
So Hud and Carol and Chris got in the truck, and they went in the truck because it had a better heater than the car did. And so Dad and I and this other guy had to back seat that little old Ford, just loaded down to nothing. And we was coming down them mountain roads, and boy, it was real slick and icy, and I was being real careful. And then it just got away from me, and so we started over, and I hit the guardrail
Mhm.
and bounced off it, and they were behind us. We bounced off it and got out there, and so then HUD stopped, and we looked it over, and we decided we could get to Fairplay, which was about 20 miles. So we drove it into Fairplay, and it ruined the tire on that side driving in there. It was all out of line.
Right.
So we spent that night, didn't we?
We had to.
But we spent that night, me and HUD fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
Some guy in the garage, HUD went in and talked to him, and this guy told him, well, come on in. We was broke, we didn't have a dime.
Right.
And this guy told him, come on in, and you guys can use my tools and fix it. We paid him something, I forget what it was, but it wasn't very much. And we never, it bent the axle. And we never did get the axle straightened up, but we got it to where the wheels were lined up, and it wouldn't wear the tires off. Then we come on to Denver. And then when we got to Denver, why, I had a, what was he, second, third cousin, Kenny Brown.
Yeah.
He was
Third
working
cousin.
for a truck line down there. And he knew I was needed work. And
So-
I'd worked for him when I was a kid in, school. He delivered milk, and I'd help him deliver milk. And he called me and told me that this company needed a truck driver. So I went down there and applied, and well, hell, I walked in and said, I want a job. And she says, get in that truck, go out to packing house. So I started for Colorado Rapid, little truck line there,
Mhm.
and I worked for them. Debbie was, she was born when we was working there. And we was living in Derby in that garage.
Mm.
So when you left Gunnison, I mean, you didn't know what job you were going for in Denver. You
No,
just
any
wanted to get
job.
to Denver.
Well, we
Yeah.
just wanted to get out of the cold.
Right.
We'd had enough of that place.
Right.
It was cold, miserable.
It was beautiful though. It was
Oh, it's
gorgeous,
beautiful
right in the
country in
top
the
of the
summertime.
mountains.
You know,
And
through
they-
the summertime it was nice, but
They grew the hay. They,
Mhm.
you know, they did the same things that all you always do.
So you left Gunnison, and then would have been what, about 50, 49? 50?
No, it would have been 49. Would have been 49 because Debbie
Debbie
wasn't
was-
born until July of
July
50.
50.
Yeah.
So it would have been in. It would have been in 49.
yeah. When we left Gunnison, I think you was carrying her when we left Gunnison.
Maybe, but yeah, I think I
Yeah.
probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
be-
probably got the job trucking like spring maybe, or
No, it was
Summer?
that fall.
Oh,
I went to
oh,
work
okay.
just as soon as I got to Denver.
okay.
I
But
worked-
on the way down the mountain, which he forgot to tell you, Doc's dad was a small guy. He was not very tall and he was wiry. And when he started making circles and getting headed for that guardrail, he grabbed hold of Doc and this boy, because he was in Millen. He says, "Here we go, boys." It was,
we
it
had
was
bruises
so
on our
funny.
leg for
Here we
2
go,
weeks.
boys. It was a bit funny. He scared us all to death, but
Yeah,
he
lucky
was
you weren't hurt.
he just cracked up.
we,
He was really funny.
but then I worked for Colorado Rapid and for a long time, and then the old man, he sold it to some guy that was working there. I didn't particularly care for him, and anyway, the truck line right across the alley,
Mm-hmm.
I got acquainted with them, and I was telling one of them over there that the old man Garnett, Mr. Garnett, had sold it to this guy, and he said, well, hell, why don't you come over here and go to work for us? So I went over and to Mr. Wrestler, and went to work, and they called it the Platte Valley Trucking Company. And I worked there till they got slow, and then I went over. Go ahead.
That's your phone.
Sorry, let me get that.
That's Clayton's phone.
Yeah. Oh, that's his.
That's Clayton's phone.
Hi there.
So
We're right in the middle of taping. What's up?
Let me tell you.
Are you coming back here?
I'll get it. Sit still. I'll see what it is.
Oh, you're not done yet.
You keep talking.
Don't know
Okay,
what it
well,
is.
that's fine. We're still
They're
doing
answering
work
the
stuff here,
phones.
so that's fine. Okay. Okay, thanks.
I have paper plates, yes. Ours in. Oh, you have it, so we can lay it down
Yeah.
there. But while we were up in Gunnison, he worked very hard and ran the hay crew. We had college kids coming up from Denver for summer, and I cooked on a coal stove, wood stove, no running water, because we were still building the big barns that were really going to be fancy.
Right.
And they were very nice. And Mom came up and we canned, made jam and this, that, and the other, and and he ran the hay crew, and I cooked for them, and then we were going on a nice fishing trip to get away.
Uh-huh.
And one day, the big house was way up on the hill, big, long, winding, driveway back down to where the barns were. They came barreling down that on his horse, lightning strikes, and he was going to reach over and catch me as I walked away from him, because I'd called him in for lunch or dinner. And when he leaned over in the saddle, the horse leaned over, and the horse's knees, I guess, hit me in the middle of the back and just sent me like a ball down the road. I went.
Oh, God.
So I was on the couch laid up when he went fishing. So I didn't like that very well.
You missed out
I
on the
missed
fishing
out
trip.
on that.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's gorgeous. They said it was absolutely gorgeous on top of that mountain.
wow.
Fish
Just It took a good half day to go up
to
there.
pack in.
And we went up there and fished and caught all the fish we were allowed to catch.
Mhm.
And then we come back and we was back, well, it was into the night till when we got
Yeah.
home. But it was
But
real
it would have
pretty.
been fun. I would have enjoyed that. I couldn't hardly move.
Did you come home and say, "Oh, we didn't have any fun at
Yeah,
all"?
no,
No.
didn't have any fun at all.
Whole string of fish.
I said, you guys just wanted it to be a guy's time. That's all you did. But it was beautiful up there, and the new facility was great.
Mhm.
It was the cow to the can, they called it, right into the big vats. They didn't have to handle milk and dump
Oh.
it in and that.
It was
Really
All mechanical,
automated,
like-
yeah.
Yeah, it was all,
And our apartment was on to the barns, but you didn't really know it. You
Mhm.
could go from our place into the
Mhm.
barn
well, we
area.
went in feed room and then on the place where we kept the
But we had running water, and it
Cleaned
was
the-
nice.
equipment and so forth was between us and the barn.
Were there other young families like you guys around, or?
No,
I think
Not
we
up
were the
there.
youngest.
there wasn't anybody up there.
There was
Sorry.
one guy that moved right after we went up there. Who was he? He lived in that little.
Oh, that guy that married that Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
He was just working there during hay season, and he was young. But the kids that were working there were college kids come up there, and they worked in the hay,
But then they went home.
and then
fall
when the
came.
hay season was over, they all went home. And,
But that Cuban girl, isn't she the first one that named a baby after me?
What was that?
Well, we've over the years had several people name babies after me
Really?
I think she did.
for
name her
various
baby.
reasons. But we were friends, and she was kind of
She was strictly from
out of the
Cuba.
society, you know. She
Mhm.
was a loner because nobody knew her customs and stuff were different. And
Mhm.
we had nothing up there. We had just what we did, so
Mhm.
we became friends, and she did get pregnant and had a baby girl.
Oh,
And
Well, she was pregnant when they
Yeah.
named her name.
wow. Mhm.
but it was lonesome. It was really lonesome.
Yeah.
And we had radio, but in those days we didn't have any electricity for months. We had,
Yeah, when we first moved up there, there wasn't hardly anything there.
Mhm.
we kind of made furniture out of logs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had used split logs to make the whatever they were,
Sod the outside of the
Yeah.
barn.
the buildings. And so we took some of them and we made a bedstead and we made a dressing table thing. And because we didn't take furniture up there,
Right.
We didn't have any.
we were lucky. Well, we didn't have very much. We had, radio and clothes, and that was it.
Well, the little apartment, all it was in it was a stove and a table and bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we went to the dairy out there, it was, well, furnished. It had,
Somewhat.
Yeah.
We had some pieces of furniture, but there was no way we could take them to Gunnison.
Mhm.
It was just too far.
I mean, where were you getting your food and stuff? Was there a grocery store?
The little store, what we would have called a company store,
Mhm.
in Doyleville. It was like the bus stop, and it was
Right.
at the railroad track, and
Well, it was
And-
post office and grocery store
All
and
in
bus
one.
stop.
so what the owner of the dairy did was set up an account there for us,
Right.
and then they paid me for feeding the summer hands.
Right.
So they allowed us so much, and then I could go there and get whatever I wanted on a tab, so
Mhm.
to speak. And then when he got his check, we'd go pay the bill.
Right.
And it was close enough. It was 7 miles, something like that.
Was that a fair trade? Because I've heard
No.
stories about, because the owner, whoever owned the store, was usually who you were working for, right? So you were.
Well, he
No,
wasn't in this
was an
instance, but
independent store.
nonetheless, it was not a good deal because it's like all credit
Yeah.
and it never pays. So we didn't ever realize very much money.
Mhm.
But because it was the dairy that owned the creamery in Gunnison, and Doc did drive the milk in, and when he was too busy, like haying, he was too busy to drive the milk, why Chris and I would go drive the milk. So we'd take the big truck full of the big milk cans and go to the dairy and turn around, get our ice cream,
Mhm.
and come home. But, you know, it was okay. It was okay.
Well, after a while, you started buying groceries when we'd go to Gunnison.
Hmm. And that was
Well, guy-
better because it
That
was
guy
cheaper.
out there, he was getting a lot of money for whatever we bought.
He knew
Because
he knew it was the only game in town.
right, he was, and it was a good piece to Gunnison to
Yeah.
just go to the store.
Yeah.
You just didn't do that,
Yeah.
so. But it was okay. It was quite an experience, but it was really cold.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was cold.
So when you moved back, or when you came down to Denver, does this tell you? who's
Just
calling?
on. No, it won't. I don't have ID.
Hello. He hasn't been here yet. Scott. Okay.
Haven't seen him.
She'll call back in 2 seconds. Well, when he gets there, can you?
Mhm.
Jeffrey, probably.
Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So when you moved back to Denver and were working for the trucking company, where were you living then?
Another garage.
Yeah, we lived in a garage out in Derby.
Okay.
No,
That-
first we lived in the garage out in Littleton
Oh, yeah, behind,
first. It
what was
was
her name?
a friend that
What
had
was
this
her
garage.
mother's?
I can't remember.
Ruby's.
Can't remember.
Ruby.
Yeah, I know, but what was her last
Oh,
name?
I don't.
Is she like a high school friend or?
No,
it was her mother's friend.
a friend of
Oh.
my mom's, and she had a house that had a garage that was an apartment. It wasn't a garage.
It was a garage.
Well, anyway, it was home for a while, and then we found another house in Derby, which was a garage.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more of a garage. It was where the garage had been, and then it had a little kitchenette and a bedroom added. So it
Mhm.
was not just a one room.
Mm-hmm. But
And-
tight quarters all the way around.
oh, tight quarters.
For four
Yeah,
people. right?
tight quarters. But it was okay. You know, it was better than one room.
Right.
And
That's where Debbie was born.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived there for a while, and then
She wasn't born in the garage.
she was born when we lived there.
Right. But at a hospital.
Oh yeah, she
Oh.
was
Yeah,
born at
yeah, she was-
actually the nicest, newest
Rose
hospital in
Memorial.
Denver, General Rose Memorial.
Okay.
It was brand new, and the dishes had roses on them. They weren't melamine either. They were they were dishes.
Right.
It was pretty fancy, and it was not too far into Denver from where we were. The county hospital was right down into Denver proper, but this
Mhm.
was on the northeastern edge,
Right.
and she was born there, and then we had moved across the highway to
across the
another.
railroad, there was a highway and a railroad track, and on the other side of that, there was a guy had a house and a basement,
A full basement
Yeah.
in Colorado. You have
Mhm.
basements.
and it had a kitchen, living room, and bedroom and bath there, and it was pretty
It
nice.
was very
but
nice,
It was damp down there all
but
the
it was a
time.
little damp, and that's where Debbie got pneumonia when she was 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been doctoring her I'd actually been to the doctor that day
Mhm.
with her for a cold, and brought her home and put her to bed, and the next morning we woke up and she was sick,
Mhm.
had a fever.
Mhm.
So she went right straight to the hospital, and she had pneumonia. And that was 32 days in the hospital,
Wow.
a long time. Very nearly lost her.
Wow.
We would have, she'd go in there and get in that, they had her in a oxygen tent, and she'd get in there and hold her and feed her. She wouldn't eat,
Right.
'cause they couldn't, so she went in and would sit in there with her and rock her and feed her. And, that's the only way, you know. In fact, that one night they called us and told us that they'd done everything they could.
Mhm.
And she went in and sat with her
Well, I'd been
and
in
rocked
there,
with her and
but I
talked to
came
her.
home like every other day or so for a couple of hours or so,
Mhm.
because Mother was staying with Chris, just to let him know that he still had parents.
Mhm.
And I had been there all during the day, and I went home in the evening and went to bed. And they called us about 2 in the morning and said she was not very good. So
Mhm.
then we both went back. And but this was a strange deal. It was a wonderful hospital, but it was a Catholic-run hospital. And in those years, you didn't mess with a Catholic sister. You know, you just didn't. And they didn't want me
They were
being
all-
there, and they just didn't know who they were dealing with,
Right.
because I didn't budge, and I just wasn't gonna let her be,
Mhm.
which is what they wanted. They wanted to just do their thing,
Right.
but they decided finally that I wasn't gonna go away, so they tolerated me being there. But when we got there, they'd already taken her out of the oxygen. They had put a rocking chair in another total room and said, "Here she is." Well, that really made us mad. So we sat in that room, and I rocked her and patted her and talked to her the rest of the night, and by morning she was alive still. So they took her away and put her back in a bed again. Wasn't very nice. And so then she started to get better because I just stayed with her. That's all.
Mhm.
But it was 32 days. She ran 107 fever. They said she would either be very bright or not.
Right.
And they did a
Well,
lot
they
of
was afraid she'd
procedures.
be brain damaged, you
Yeah,
know.
they did a lot of procedures on her, and
Sure.
they wanted to do others, and we chose not to have them do those because they were so invasive.
Mhm.
And but I just went and spent time because they couldn't, and I knew they couldn't
Mhm.
stay there for an hour to feed a baby
Sure.
or whatever it took. But when she had a normal temperature for 24 hours, then we could bring her home. So we got that in 32 days.
Incredible. And what kind
And
of
she was like 12 pounds. She's just a little skeleton.
and how old was she at this point?
She was 6 months. She was 6
Oh.
months old when she went in,
Gotcha.
and so she was like 7 months in a week or something like that.
Mhm.
And Jiminy Whiz, she had weighed like 20-something pounds when she went in.
Mhm.
And so they said then for the balance of that year, the whole balance of of that year till she was 1, she couldn't go outside into different airs. So we kept her in the house, and it was a more of a constant temperature.
Mhm.
And she just got as fat and chubby as she had been, and was really healthy after that.
Mhm.
It was a strange thing. I don't really understand it because we were doctoring.
Right.
If we hadn't been to the doctor, I wouldn't have been as surprised.
Almost like the immune system was built up over that time. So,
Could have been.
so what kind of a hospital bill did this leave you with?
What?
What kind of a hospital bill did it leave us with?
Well, we had,
We had some insurance through the
Through the
truck
insurance,
company,
yeah.
and
It took care of just about all
pretty
of
much,
it.
we paid on
We
it for
paid.
about a year.
Yeah, we paid,
So much a month for about a year.
Mhm.
And the doctor, we finally got him paid. He was independent of that. But he didn't charge us.
Well, it,
Country doctor, he was
Mhm.
he was a
Well,
good
it was
doctor, but
just-
he's a GP,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to him for a long time.
well, we did.
We liked him a lot.
So we
but-
came to California, we always went to him.
It was very expensive, but not in terms of what today's costs
Sure.
are by any means.
Yeah.
But I was really upset when we left there. The nuns gave me the list of formula that Debbie was on,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked at it, and I told Dr. Lentz was with me, and I said, this isn't right. I said, she was on more food than this when she came into this hospital. You know, the formula was stronger. And I gave it to him to look at. And he went and questioned the nurse, and they had been giving her less than a third of the food value that she needed. So, what do you know about that? So, had they been using the right formula with her, she probably would have gotten better a lot sooner.
Right.
But she was just a little bitty skeleton. She looked like the Dickens, and but boy, she sure put on weight quick. And by the time she was a year, 12, 14 months old, you'd have never known she was sick.
Right.
She was as cute as a bug.
Yeah.
But we weren't very happy. We went to see Miss Mother Superior,
Really?
the doctor and I. You
Right.
bet.
Right.
You bet.
And how did that go?
Not too well, but we said our piece. But we had it written down in their handwriting, what they'd been giving her, and he had his orders.
Right.
So there was it was totally wrong.
Was there anything? I mean, they offered to make it right
No.
somehow. This wasn't.
No, it was
You
something
didn't
they.
sue in those days.
No. But it was at least he was forewarned,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to send patients there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were lucky that it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a terrible time.
So in the meantime, the trucking company's paying you better than working on the
Yeah.
dairies.
Yeah, it was a better job.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and you went home at night. You didn't
yeah,
spend
you had-
24 hours
you
on
had
the
your
job.
weekends off.
Yeah.
You know, and with the dairy, you didn't have any days off. You know, well, when we worked for Arch, we got every other Sunday off.
For the milking.
Yeah, we didn't have to milk every other Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
He'd milk and feed, and we had Sunday off, every other Sunday. But that's about all.
How far were you driving?
Oh, just
Long?
around town. I was pickup man. I'd go around and pick up all the freight around town,
Mm-hmm.
bring it into the dock, and then we had, well, there was two of us that would go all day, and we'd pick up freight all day,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd bring it in and unload it at night, and we had 4 trucks that run out to little towns all around Denver,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd put the stuff in, you know, there was 5 doors, and we'd unload at one door and then spread the stuff up and down the other 4 doors.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys would come in and they hauled milk in the morning, hauled it, picked it up at the ranches and the farms and brought it into Denver and distributed it to the creameries. And then they'd come in there and pick up this freight and take it out and deliver it on their way home. And it was a long old day for them old boys.
Yeah.
But we'd bring it in, have it all ready, all they had to do. And some days when we were through early and so forth, well, we'd help them load and so forth. And the old man, he wanted me to be his relief operator. So I had to learn all of the routes of these guys. And 4 days a week, well, I'd take a different route. And then the 5th day, I'd work around town.
Right.
And we did that until he sold it, and then I went to work for Flat Valley. So that was kind of interesting. When we was living at that little one-room apartment, I guess that was before Chris was born, went up on that mountain to that bull ride.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't ridden anything in over a year. And Kopi wanted me to go up there and get in the bull riding, so I went up there and it didn't work out very good.
This was after you were married, before Chris was born?
Yeah, start
Okay.
back when you platted the bull rope all over this one
Yeah.
room. This was really
I was
interesting.
making a bull rope and I made it out of string and I scattered it all over this one room.
Back and
Fine.
forth over the room,
No,
you know.
what is a bull rope exactly? It's different from a...
Well, it was just something that I had in my mind it would work better than the regular bull rope. And never
It's
did
the
get
one that
just-
goes around the bull and then you put
Oh.
your hand in it.
Okay.
And nowadays they use an actual rigging. It's leather, isn't
Well,
it?
no.
No, is
it's
it
the
still a
same.
rope?
It's a hemp.
But it has a handle woven in and all
Yeah,
that.
it had a handle woven in.
Well, his didn't. It was all string.
So you were going to make your own, and
And he strung this string back and forth across this one room.
Right.
This string, enough to plait a rope that big around.
Mhm.
Single little strings.
right?
Was that fun?
Well,
And this,
wasn't nothing else to do at night.
I know. So we had to get in through this one room with all this string everywhere. It was funny.
so were you doing this to win money or to have fun or both?
Oh, I just have fun more than anything, and cause when I was in Wyoming, rode everything come up, but I hadn't been on anything in over a year.
Uh-huh.
Folk decided that's what I ought to do, go out there and
Go
get
out
in
there?
that bull ride.
So they moved him over and closed the chute gate.
Yeah,
Okay.
they had some bulls in there, and they had little ones and big ones. It was kind of a Mickey Mouse place, and they run this big old black bull in there, and I knew that was my bull. And man, he come out and he bucked me off so quick they had to move me to shut the chute gate. It's a shame because there was guys that could have made money on him.
On
that
him.
was there.
He
but,
was a
Right.
good bull.
But
He was a little bit ill. It really
yeah, it
threw
jarred
him
me a
hard,
little.
made him sicker than a dog is what it did. So I said, okay, I don't think I like this very well.
Did that put an end to your bull riding career?
Yeah.
Did you try it?
For then,
Yeah.
well, we were in city,
More or
for
less.
heaven's sake.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't where he was riding horses or doing anything.
Right.
He was riding a truck.
Right.
It wasn't very funny, but we did a lot of stuff. We junked cars with Bonnie and Mike.
Yeah, well, after
Did what?
We jumped
When-
out cars, you know.
when Debbie come out of the hospital, we lived in that basement apartment. And then we got a chance to move into a little apartment. There was, a guy had a construction yard, and they had the office. And then next to it was an apartment. It was a living room, kitchen, bedroom, and a little
Bathroom,
bitty bedroom, wasn't
like it was kind of off of the
it? Yeah.
kitchen.
And that's where the kids would sleep in there, and then we moved in there, and
And then it had like a duplex
yeah, a
thing in the
duplex
back
across the back.
that they rented.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at least out where the kids had a yard
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
they could play.
they could play in the backyard because it was fenced.
Right.
And it was down in a kind of an industrial area. There was not a lot of traffic. In fact, this was the only place that came, the road that came into it, that's the only place it came into, and we stayed there. Neighbor kid, his folks got a television,
Uh-oh.
and he was about the same age, maybe a year older than
He
Chris.
was a year older.
Mm-hmm.
So when they first got it, well, of course, Chris could come in and watch it, and then as he got a little older with the kid, you can't come watch my television. Chris come in mad, crying
Cry.
because he couldn't go watch the
See
television.
cartoons. All black
So-
and white on a little set about that big.
Right.
So we went down and bought a TV for Chris.
And he was 5 that year because he went to school off of Vallejo.
Did he go there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
With the little girl from the guy that worked at the construction company.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So he was 5 that year, so we didn't have television until he was 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived there, and I was still working for trucking companies, and her grandmother got sick or kind of, or she couldn't take care of herself anymore because she was blind. And so she told us one day that she'd give us her pension if we'd take her and give her a room and feed her,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So we thought, well, hell, and we rented a place out on South Broadway there in Denver, and moved out there. And she had a room, the kids had a room,
And we had a
and
room.
we had a room,
Woo.
and there was the dining room and kitchen. Well, the dining room, living room was kind of all one.
Mm-hmm.
The kitchen and a garage, and we stayed there for quite a while. Why did we move down to that little store?
We moved to the other place because it was a lot cheaper.
I
And
guess-
it was in west end of town. This other one was on the south end of town, and that was quite removed at that time from the main, downtown area.
Because we're doing a lot of moving around.
We did, but each time we did it for a reason, a little bit more room
A little bit better place.
for what we were paying, because housing was
It just-
was hard,
there's no
still
housing.
hard,
There-
to
it
get.
was just hard as hell to get anything.
and
We rented it was a grocery store
had
when we
been a
was going to
grocery
school
store
Mm-hmm.
in there. It was just a
right
block
across
from high
from
school.
West High School again.
And it was a little grocery store when we was going to school, and they closed it down and made a kind of an apartment out of it. Well, the people were living in the back when it was going to school, and then when they closed it down, they moved somewhere. We moved in there, and she fixed that place up like a little dollhouse. Inside, it looked, just a storefront. We had curtains and we had big bay windows, had curtains. She fixed it up. It looked just like a little dollhouse on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there
With Grandma.
with Grandma. And then when Grandma passed away, we got a chance to rent a little place out at,
South Estes.
huh?
Out on South
Yeah, on
Estes.
South Estes.
West of Denver, almost to the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah.
gorgeous.
We had a horse then. Dad had went to Texas and worked down there and bought a horse while he was down there and brought it up and gave it to me. And he was a pretty nice little horse. We kept him out there, and then when they laid us off there at Santa Fe Trails, why, her folks was her dad and stepmother was there visiting us,
And Tyrone.
and Tyrone, and he said, well, come go to California with us. We can always get work out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we stored everything in Mert's garage and loaded that old horse in the little single horse trailer that we had, and the dog
You see little girls.
and a kitten
Mm-hmm.
and
The television.
television and the two kids and her and I, and here we come. And we got down here, well, come into Flagstaff, Arizona, and it had snowed so much that year you couldn't see over the snow. They'd
Right.
clean it and just throw it up on the sides,
Right.
and you couldn't see over it. It was over 6 foot deep. We didn't have any money to stop, and
Right.
they was recommending that nobody go down the little crooked mountain road.
Right.
But we didn't have any money to stop, and we had snow tires on. And so we started down that mountain, and this old horse, hadn't hauled him much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised when we started down that little crooked road that he didn't go to fighting around. He just come down, never made a move all the way down. We got down to Williams, there in Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
and it was down on the flat ground, and it was out of the snow. God darn, there was 1,000 cars seemed like went whizzing by us.
Had
you know.
followed us down the
They'd
mountain.
followed us down the mountain. There was a bunch of them. I don't know how many there was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We was
Serious.
out front with nobody in front of us till we got clear down to where it was,
Uh-huh.
out of snow and level
Mhm.
ground. And then they went on. Then we come on in to this little motel over here on Hamner where her dad was managing,
Mhm.
and we unloaded that horse, and it was in December, and we took him out of a snowbank back there in Colorado, loaded him in that trailer and hauled him out here and unloaded him out of that trailer, and he had a big area back there in back that was fenced.
Mhm.
I turned him out there, and the grass was about knee deep. That poor old horse thought he died and went to heaven.
Warm weather.
Warm weather.
Yeah,
Yeah, even in
warm,
January.
no snow and grass up to his belly. He really enjoyed it.
Do you want-
And
Gonna pause for a few minutes?
Yeah, we better, because I
Take a
don't
break.
see my barbecue's here yet.
Okay. Let's take a break.
Okay.
Okay. I think I have about a half an hour's worth.
see the one there.
I think I have about a half an hour's worth of tape left. So
Okay.
see what takes us. Ooh. Oh, where's that pen?
Oh, over here.
That pen will work.
That little
there.
gray one will be fine. Yeah, it should work anyway. The girls had it.
All right. I think we left off yesterday when you had just gotten to California, but I wanted to kind of go back to
You mean the first time we came or the second time we came?
the second time.
Yeah,
I wanted to go back to Denver and Colorado in general, and just ask, in general, what did you guys do for fun?
Fun. Pop popcorn on Friday night. Pretty much. Oh, he roped. We
I roped some, and
belonged to a roping club once we finally got a horse.
then we belonged to this club, and we'd have potluck dinners round, and we'd have it at our house one week, somebody else's the next.
Mm-hmm.
And after we'd get done with the potluck dinner, well, there was two Grange halls or three where we'd go to those dances.
2 or 3, yeah, 2.
About 2 or 3
One up
places
in the
where they had
mountains,
old country dances, you know, and we'd go out there
Family.
and square dance and
Mm-hmm.
fiddle around like that.
The whole bunch.
Yeah,
The whole bunch of
tribe.
us would go.
No, there was probably 15 couples of us.
Probably. And they all, the boys all roped.
Mm-hmm.
And we all had little kids, you know, between whatever,
No, some of the guys
2
were
and 5
single,
or
but
7.
most of us had a family, and we'd all get together on Sundays and rope, but Saturday nights we would
have our
all
potlucks.
get together and have a potluck, you know, at somebody's house.
And that was fun.
And it was fun, and we'd go dance till wee hours in the morning and get up and go rope. But we didn't rope very early, we roped probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We,
We'd go to the show, though. We'd go to the show.
yeah, picture shows.
And they were very inexpensive then.
Yeah.
Very.
When we were at that museum, the building museum, and there was that postcard that showed downtown Denver, and there was a theater there. Which theater was that?
Tabor.
Tabor Theater, it was a movie house when we were there, but before that it was an opera house. When Denver was in its roaring, what was it, the early 1900s, late 1800s, why it was a roaring town, and it was this guy named Tabor built it. In fact, he had owned a lot of the town, and he had this actress come there, and I guess he divorced his wife and married her, and she was Baby Doe Tabor. And then they had the Tabor Theater, and she would act at the Tabor
She
Theater.
sang. She was a singer.
Yeah, well, she'd act and sing. It was a regular opera.
Yeah, it was an opera house that was top of the line in those days.
Oh, it was.
You know, really velvets and
one of the
plush
biggest things
chairs
from
and-
Mm-hmm.
the west side of Mississippi. But it was all just a movie theater when we were there. They had a lot of the ornate things in it. But we'd go down there and they had a street that had, what, 15 shows, theaters on it,
Oh, probably.
you know. And you could go see about any show that was out at the time. Some of them were older and some were newer. But we'd go to show. Always take our kids with us most year, whenever we went anywhere.
We never had a babysitter because Mert and Mother both worked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they both worked. And so we did go where we couldn't take the kids. And basically when they got older, or when they were younger, we took them to drive-in theaters because we had a lot of drive-in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
In those days.
And
They were,
we could take our own snacks or whatever and go, and kids could rat if they wanted to, you know. Didn't bother anybody else. So.
And was that out here or was that still in Denver?
No, it was still in Denver.
Okay.
Yeah. We did that out here too, over on Van Buren.
Right.
That was the only one that we went to, isn't it?
well,
Now
I
and then
know
we
they
went
had
to
one on
Rubidoux.
Mission Boulevard, that
Yeah.
one out there in Mission Boulevard.
But not very often.
Now, what about, you started telling me some stories yesterday about Bonnie and Mike. Were these, you met them in Denver? Where'd you meet them?
We met them
Well,
at
we,
the dances, didn't we, to
no,
start with?
we met Bonnie and Mike through
Oh,
Lila, Jean, and Herb.
Lila and her, because they were what, shirt tail cousins or
Yeah,
way
Mike
back
and Herb
something?
were
Fifth
first or
cousins
second
removed
cousins, I
or
forget,
something,
but
you
they
know.
were related somewhere.
That's right.
And we got acquainted with Mike, and we would go hunting with him. We'd deer hunt, and with him, and pheasant hunt a little bit, and so forth. And then we got to, we'd go up into the mountains, and we'd do what they call bowing, and we'd climb them pine trees clear up, Mike and I would, to where the bark changes from real rough to smooth.
Wow.
And then we'd start cutting branches and just cut them off till we got the whole tree from there down, lick of branches. And when they'd fall on top of each other, and then an axe bow, when you hit they was real easy to cut then.
Right.
And when they get to the ground, her and Bonnie had a pair of, kind of like, what do you call them, pruning shears,
Sort of.
and they'd cut them up into lengths about 4 foot long,
Mm-hmm.
and bundle them up in 20 pounds to the bundle with wire,
Mm-hmm.
stack them up, and then we'd go to another tree. When we got down by
That's
them,
hard work.
we'd help them, and we'd get it all cleaned up. And Chris and Debbie were little. Debbie was
Debbie was
2.
probably maybe 2.
maybe 2 then.
Chris was 5.
It was snow, deep snow, and we'd take take shovel and clean out a regular little igloo, and take them pine boughs and make them a bed in there, and we'd make it as big as that couch, you know.
So they'd have a place.
They'd have a place where they could, play in there, and it was all covered with snow, and they'd play in there, and we had the boughs come over the front, so it was just a little house in there.
And this was just extra income for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It
was,
was-
we
Only way we
Who-
could buy Christmas presents.
Who came up with, was this Mike that had done this before, or how did you get,
Yeah,
how did you
well,
find out that this was available?
he had, I don't know whether he'd ever done it before, but he knew some guys who had,
Hmm.
and we went up there and we got, we got $20 a ton.
Something. It wasn't very much, but it was more
A
than we would have
ton of
had.
boughs.
Right.
It don't take long to get a ton of boughs.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd get them, and we'd make pretty good money with it. But it wasn't enough to quit your job and go do it.
Dangerous too.
You bet.
Well,
It was
yeah.
dangerous because they got shot at more than once
Yeah.
up in the trees.
What?
We,
I don't know what in the
I
world
guess
that
they
was
thought
about.
we were bears or something. I don't know what they,
They
either
had
that or
on-
they just wanted to shoot somebody.
Red. They had on red shirts,
We-
and
you know, we were-
and boy, one day we were all just ducking for cover, and they were up there yelling,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, don't shoot! I'm alive!" We never did find out who it was.
Wow.
But it was dangerous.
How many times did that happen?
Oh,
Twice, I think.
yeah,
Really?
at least,
Two
at least
separate
twice.
times.
Wow.
And
That was seasonal,
and
so
they
I
weren't-
mean, it was a
you know,
short.
It wasn't in the
Yeah.
same area,
Right.
so it wasn't, I don't think it was the same guy unless Mike had somebody that didn't like him, I don't know.
Right.
Couldn't have been you.
But, it was kinda funny.
But it was a lot of hard work, but it was kind of fun. Kids
Yeah.
would play, and we took our lunches, and,
Mm-hmm.
but it was hard work, and it was cold.
We didn't have to haul them out, all we had to do was
Stack 'em
cut
on
them and
pallets.
bundle them and stack them, and then they come in and
Load 'em.
brought them out and weighed them.
Yeah.
And they sent them right here to Chino in California,
Mm-hmm.
You know the Del
So they-
Robia wreaths that they make here.
Sure.
the Casa Calina Boys Home or
Boys' Home.
whatever it is over there. They'd ship them out here.
So
They
you guys,
make Christmas wreaths out of it.
and that was Christmas money.
That was Christmas
Yeah, that
money.
we did it in, we'd
October.
start in the last October and take about a month.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to, they didn't take them after the middle of November. We started last September, about a month and a half, we cut boughs. Every Saturday and Sunday for near.
Mm-hmm.
And, so then we cut boughs and we got quite a bit of money for our Christmases that way.
Yeah, well, our one experience with charging something only lasted once.
And then
How
one
about
time, we didn't have any money.
Chris was
Three,
he was 4, and Debbie was a little over a year.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, somewhere in all this stuff we keep, I have a newspaper clipping, and we went out to Sears, and it was what? Montgomery Ward, excuse me. I thought it was Sears. We went out to shop, and there was a Santa Claus, and it was winter, and they took the picture of Chris and Debbie with the Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really
The newspaper.
for the newspaper. Just happened that they were the ones that were there, you know, seeing him at that moment.
Oh.
And it was a cute little write-up, you know. How about Debbie Copeland and
Mhm.
Chris Copeland and all that. So anyhow, we shopped and we looked for Christmas things and we bought whatever we wanted and charged it. And we'd never charged anything before.
They just had the application. And said-
Well, I don't know how
No,
that came
I think-
about, but
Mert had to co-sign for us, cause had no
We didn't
credit,
have credit.
you know, nothing at all.
Mhm.
we
We'd never
didn't
bought
need
anything
credit,
on
you
credit.
know, we hadn't.
Uh,
But anyway, we charged it, and that was fine, and we paid for it. But a year later, a whole year later, we were still paying on that bill, and it wasn't very much. It probably was $150, whatever it was. I mean, it wasn't much,
Mhm.
but you didn't understand how it worked until you did it, you know?
Right.
So they kept adding interest and, you know, the whole thing.
Right.
So when we realized that we were still paying 12 months later for something we had used, we never ever charged another thing. We never charged anything more,
Really.
ever.
Well, we bought some cars, but
Well, yeah,
so far
but
as
I mean, just
like
stuff.
your
You know,
credit cards now.
you buy a
we-
house and you on credit, and you buy a car on credit, but.
Mhm.
So I pay the bills ahead of time, and I never pay a late charge on anything.
Wow.
But I tell you, that was a shock, because when you make $30, for instance,
Right.
I mean, we made more than that, but, and you're paying out this money that you've already long gone, and you think, how
Well,
many
we
times
figured
over
that-
you've paid for that in the year?
Everything cost us just not quite double of what the
Spent,
original price
you know.
was.
Mhm.
So we figured
we
that was not a
decided
very
that
good way to
wasn't
go.
So we paid cash for everything. We didn't even have a checking account until after we came to California quite a while. And old Louis Grande, the guy that we used to have our insurance with, the old man all the time, where he would kid his secretary. He'd say, "Well, here comes Doc. Going to pay his insurance in cash." Never check, in cash.
In cash, yeah, we didn't, no. We saved our money and did what we did, you know, and saved money. We saved money nearly all the time.
Was
A
it?
little.
Wasn't much, you know, but we
Right.
saved it so that,
Well, when we had had to buy a car or something, or we
Right.
had a little cash to go in on, never very much.
It's a good lesson to think about, you guys.
Yeah.
Times haven't changed. You still pay a lot of money for
Oh
credit.
yeah. Oh yeah. There's all
And
kinds of schemes.
Everybody has
Makes
to have
sense.
credit, at one time or another. And it's a good thing if you understand how to use it.
So, I mean, when you guys, I guess, throughout from Denver to here and so forth, when you guys didn't have a lot of money and had payments and kids to take care of and all that, how did that affect your relationship? I mean, was it hard to get along when you're
No,
No,
scraping
not
by?
really.
Or?
we never
I
had
didn't
any
think so.
trouble dealing with
No, we
being
just,
without. It was something we understood.
Mm-hmm.
that it was a 50-50
Right.
proposition.
And we'd go, even in this house, after we built this house in '62, and that was a payment
Mm-hmm.
that we had. And he was still ready-mix truck driving and this and that, which, paid all right. But we didn't have a lot of other bills, just the household bills like you always do, gas
Right.
and lights and whatever. But when Chris and Debbie were big enough, probably Dana's age, Jeffrey's age, right, Debbie was probably that old. And Chris was in high school and he worked a little bit at Lemon Plant. And that was fine. But we would pool our money at the end of the week and we'd go buy a 6-pack of Coke and have popcorn, and that was our week.
Basically, well, we'd
That was
go
our treat.
over to Taco
You
Tia.
know. Yeah. On Van Buren.
On Van Buren?
It was on Van Buren. It was
That was
the
only
original
taco
one.
place within driving distance of here
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
And occasionally we'd go over there and have tacos. And that was enough. I mean, that was enough. He had his horses and we had all this to take care of and to be here, so.
But it was never hard your relationship wise to not have any money.
If you don't have it, you don't miss it.
When you never had it, you don't miss it.
We
all
were
of our
used
lives,
to all of
we
our
never-
families, Mom
Never
and
had.
Dad separated when I was 2, and Mom worked hard and was a single parent, so we had to count every penny. And his folks were the same. They had 4
Yeah.
to feed,
Mm-hmm.
plus 30 boys that were always with him and
Oh,
40 girls that were always with Cleo and Lila and Jeannie.
Yeah, a lot of the kids, after we left Brush and went to Denver, every time anybody'd come to Denver, they'd stay at our house.
Mm-hmm.
And I know half of them never paid any rent or anything.
Sure.
Neither did the girls' friends.
No, well, I think Wilma did. But I think
Well,
she
but that was
the only
Kelly's girlfriend.
one. Yeah. But that was about all.
Just switch tapes real
But
quick.
no,
This one's about